Okay, we're going to cover the laryngeal skeleton, also the muscles that are associated with the laryngeal skeleton. So this is going to depict most of the muscles that are going to impact the vocal cords. So I'm just going to kind of go through the structures here first. So up here superior is the hyoid bone. This is the only floating bone in the body, so it doesn't articulate with any other bones. It does articulate, though, with the larynx, specifically at the thyroid cartilage. So all the cartilages that are depicted here are actually made up of hyaline cartilage. So this is a very resilient and strong cartilage that protects our airway, both against the atmospheric pressure. So when we breathe in, we're dropping the pressure inside of our larynx down below what that is of atmosphere, so it needs to basically stay open and stay strong against atmospheric pressure. The other thing is it needs to be protective against any types of forces that might impact this area as well. So starting out with thyroid cartilage, there are a number of different structures that are important. This is called the laryngeal prominence right here, and this is a palpable bony landmark. On males, you can see this more prominently, and it's called the Adam's apple in layman's terms. So that is laryngeal prominence right in the middle. On either side, we have a lamina. So this is the lamina on the right side, lamina on the left side, and then there's an oblique line that would serve as attachment points for muscles. Then here we have the superior horn, and that's going to be the portion of the thyroid cartilage that articulates with the hyoid bone. Down here we have the inferior horn, and that is going to form the cricothyroid joint. So right there, there's actually a joint where we can have movement occurring like that. This portion right here is called the cricoid cartilage, and of all the cartilages, this is the only one that is 360 degrees continuous around the larynx. Up here are what we call arytenoid cartilage, and the arytenoid cartilage are actually movable cartilage pieces that are going to be impacted by muscles and have different impacts on the vocal cords. They have a vocal process on the anterior side, and they have a muscular process on the posterior side. Down below here we have the tracheal cartilage rings, and these tracheal cartilage rings are not continuous across the back portion or the posterior portion of the trachea, because that's where our esophagus sits, so we need to be able to pass food past that area. One of the most important structures is going to be the epiglottis, so this is actually made up of elastic cartilage, and the pharynx is going to sit above and posterior to this area, so when someone is taking food or liquid into their mouth, that's going to pass over, and the epiglottis would come down and cover the airway at that point. So really important structure there. Now, to cover the different muscles, we have several different muscles that are going to impact this. What we're replicating with this motion of the string here is really the action of the posterior cricoarytenoid muscles. So these posterior cricoarytenoid muscles cause rotation in the arytenoid cartilages that actually abduct the vocal folds. So they're pulling that those vocal folds open, and what they're doing is they're creating a space called the rima glottitis, and the rima glottitis is going to be the area in between the vocal folds. So as you can see there, it's small. Here we've increased the size in that. Now the muscle that would work the opposite way is going to be a little bit harder to see, but if we're looking down in through here, we can see on either side the lateral cricoarytenoid cartilages, and these are going to actually have the opposite rotational impact on these arytenoid cartilages, where if we were open like that, these are going to adduct or decrease the size of the rima glottitis, so making it smaller. Now, right on the vocal folds are muscles called the vocalis, and these are actually going to modulate tension in the vocal folds. There's actually two muscles back here. One is depicted in kind of an X across the posterior side here. So that's going to be the oblique arytenoid muscle. And then we have below there a muscle that's fibers run in the transverse plane. So that's going to be the transverse arytenoid muscle. Both of those would actually have an impact that this model doesn't really depict all that well. But this would draw the arytenoid cartilages closer together like that. And what that's doing is it actually adducts the posterior portion of the rima glottis. So if you can imagine, maybe perhaps we have some degree of rotation here, but those arytenoid cartilages coming together are going to close the posterior portion or adduct the posterior portion of that, of the vocal folds. Then down here, we have the cricothyroid muscle, and the cricothyroid muscle would cause this type of motion at the cricothyroid joint, and that is going to increase the tension in the vocal folds. Now, not depicted on this model is a muscle called the thyroarytenoid muscle. And that would actually have the opposite impact. So what it's going to do is pull back on this thyroid cartilage, pulling it closer to the arytenoid cartilage, thereby releasing the tension on the vocal folds. Now, when we have the motion of the cricothyroid muscle, that's going to increase the pitch of our voice. And as we drop back, that's going to decrease the pitch of our voice. And then finally up here, not related to the vocal folds so much, we basically have a muscle that's spanning from the hyoid to the thyroid cartilage. So just wanted to mention that, but it's going spanning across from the hyoid to the thyroid cartilage.